Hello guys, my name is Kimenek and welcome into my movie review of Alita the Battle Angel. And alright, I know, this review is a bit overdue, but I absolutely love the movie. I loved it so much, in fact, I wanted to make a perfect review of it, and let's just say that didn't end up all that well. I ended up deleting the whole project because it was just unwatchable and started all over again. So let's hope that this time around my perfectionist self won't kick in, because I'm gonna be too lazy to redo it for a second time. Either way, let's start off by saying that I'm not much of a movie enthusiast myself. Most of the films nowadays feel to me as if they had their stories purposely watered down in favor of increasing sales. Like, sure, simpler stories are easier to watch and make more people go and actually see the movies they otherwise wouldn't, which is good because it makes both the story and its creators more popular. But on the other hand, seeing some mainstream studio completely butcher a story that somebody loved just for the sake of making some quick cash out of it, yeah, it kinda pains you to see that. But then there is Alita. Alita, which does not stand by in the presence of greedy corporations looking for some quick cash grab opportunities. She actually goes out there and shows them what it's like to have a solid, immersive story that people will actually remember. And fails. Come on guys, go and see the film. It's good and I need sequels. Anyway, when I went to see Alita, I didn't have somewhat high expectations for her. You see, we get a bit of a family tradition running in our family that on my birthday, my mom and I always go and see a movie together. We do this so she doesn't have to buy me yet another pair of socks or something. Nothing wrong against socks, but seeing a movie is just a tad bit better, alright? Not to mention that I get to talk a bit with my mom. Still, as you might expect, most of the time the movies we get to see are rather mediocre, and I go there more or less just to talk a bit with my mom rather than anything else. I don't really care about those movies anyways, and this time around I haven't had a headache. But my mom had already planned her entire day around us seeing the movies, so let's just say that I was kinda forced to go there. But I'm thankful for that, because seeing Alita absolutely shocked me. I had pretty low expectations going to the cinema, just another one of those birthday movies, I thought, but as I sat there watching it, I felt as my expectations were slowly being crushed as Alita soared high above them with sheer quality. The film made me feel all sorts of emotions, some of which I forgot that I even had. And that's coming from a person with a long-lasting depersonalization. I literally cannot feel some of the emotions as they are too faint for me to even notice. But this film made my emotional spectrum shine like a Christmas tree, and I'm dearly thankful for it. Anyway, let's talk about the things I liked about the movie, starting off with the first thing you get to see on every film, the visuals. And do I really need to say anything here? It's James Cameron, the literal god amongst men when it comes to visual effects. Every movie he has made throughout the past decade was an absolute visual spectacle to look at, and Alita was definitely not the one to break the line now. But there was two visually related things that you might be asking me about right now. Hey Kimmy, but what about those absolute saucers of an eyes that she had? Weren't they, weird or unsettling? Well, not really. Just look at this cute little killing machine. Can you truly call this weird or disgusting? Sure, I was also disgusted when I saw these grotesque eye things in the trailer of the film, and I thought that I wouldn't be able to look at the film and be able to throughout enjoy it without having the constant feeling of Alita being all goofy and unrealistic, but in the end, it was the exact opposite of that. Their huge size was surprisingly barely even noticeable on screen, and if I ever noticed them, it was during the beautiful, emotional scenes where they only emphasized the feelings I felt from them. Without those big, captivating eyes that Alita has, I don't think I would be able to truly get into the story as much as I did. They were like magnets for my own eyes, dragging me into the story and making me shed a tear for every time Alita shed one of her own. Yeah, sometimes they looked a bit weird and goofy, but that was only when I started thinking about how can she fit those two burrito-sized eyes into her head. But at that point I always stopped myself and was like, hey, you watch 3-meter-tall Tarzan Smurf jumping around half naked for like 2 hours. Don't try to explain stuff. Also, in the manga it's a lot worse. Over there, Alita, or Gabby if you prefer that name, looks almost like a doll with huge eyes, perfect skin and puffy lips on a really tiny mouth with a constant pouty expression. Octopus lips! She also has the most doll-like hairstyle I've ever seen. If she would be put into a movie looking like this, it wouldn't be that bad, but oh damn, there will be more than a few Alita themed sex dolls by now. Also, is it weird that I'm sexually attracted to her back muscles? Cause damn. Still, the overall visuals of the film were stunning and I just couldn't get enough of them, but there was still a teeny weeny little bit of a problem called 2D. And here I'm going to quote Your Movie Sucks because he described the problem better than I ever would. It's like we are supposed to feel sad for her, while the film is simultaneously saying, hey, doesn't this look cool? The visual effects of this film were so good that they have become overbearing. It was like one of those video games that tries to look Ultra HD but ends up looking unrealistic. Sure, I can count the mechanical pores on her face, but do I like it? This became especially apparent when I went to see the movie in 2D, as in 2D the film doesn't have that 3D blur effect that otherwise makes the film a bit more digestible. Like, it wasn't bad, it's just that the overdone effects sometimes felt like a slap across my face in the otherwise emotional scenes. I like looking at them, sure, but they sometimes distracted me from the amazing story that I'm gonna get right now into. But before that, let me put a spoiler warning for those who haven't watched the film yet, because yeah, the film is really good and I don't want to ruin it for you. So you get 5 seconds to either skip to the time shown on the screen right now or to close the video entirely. Alright, good? Good. So, the story of this film is the main reason why I love it so much. It just has so much potential, so much raw untapped power! Sorry, I wanted to sound like some manga villain for a while. Either way, what I enjoyed the most about the story of this film is just how realistically it felt. Alita, especially Alita, was really moody at times with her emotions jumping all over the spectrum, sometimes not even aligning with what's happening around her. She's a really cute and kind person, but also a really cruel warrior. One moment she's this curious little daughter of Dr. Edo that's just discovering the world around her. And the other moment, she's an absolute fucking killing machine ripping people's guts out just for the thrill of it. This instability of her behavior makes her pretty confusing at times as you don't really know how is she going to react to different situations. But surprisingly enough, this is exactly what makes her character feel realistic and relatable. People, and especially girls of her age, tend to behave like that, shaped by the things they experience. It's completely normal. What I also loved about the film was that they haven't made Alita into a mirror suit. She's not perfect, far from that actually. Her personality is childish, naive and combustive. One second she is getting lost in Hugo's stories of Zalem and how good must be living there, and the other second she is mad. Real fucking mad, you better prepare your anus. Or shoulder, of course. It felt so refreshing to finally see a movie where the main protagonist doesn't just stumble upon their powers and then proceeds to do nothing with them until someone comes in demanding that they use their powers to do something good and then yada yada yada, now you're a hero. No, this doesn't happen in Alita. Once Alita finds out she's good at fighting, she actively searches for ways she can help other people. She does not stand by in the presence of evil. She's also not completely overpowered, as we might have seen in the fight against Gruishka, where Gruishka cut off 3 of her limbs, but she still stood up. Alright, that was a bit insensitive of me. Still, she picked herself up with her last remaining arm and launched herself at Gruishka's face in a last-ditch attempt of killing him. She buried her arm deep into his eye socket and almost managed to kill him by squeezing the life out of his brain. But he tore her last remaining arm to shreds and threw her on the ground, knocking her unconscious. She was heavily outclassed back then, and if it wasn't for a well-timed intervention by Dr. Edo and that hound guy, she would most likely be dead. The fact that she is not untouchable, not perfect, makes her character even more realistic and relatable. In fact, I would go as far as to say that I've never seen a character as relatable as Alita, and this already is saying something. And it's not just Alita who feels realistic, it's also the things she experiences, the people she meets, and the story as a whole. In the film, we are giving this character called Dr. Edo. He's a man who has helped Alita by recovering her from a scrapyard and repairing her. However, he quickly grew emotionally attached to Alita after her innocent face and beauty reminded him of his deceased daughter. This, in combination with Alita losing her memory and having no one else to go after she would recover, caused Edo to prolong her recovery stay and basically adopt her. He started treating Alita like an actual daughter of his, feeding her, clothing her, and protecting her. All the while he's teaching her about the world they are living in. He behaves like an actual father would, and he even becomes accepted as a father-like figure by Alita, since after all, she has no other family that she knows of. However, Edo never mentioned one thing, and that's that to keep the clinic running, he had to become a hunter warrior, a man who puts his life on the line in order to earn some credits while enforcing the little law that there is. After Alita finds out about this, she begins to be scared for Edo's life. She can't bear having to just sit around doing nothing while he's out there risking his life. She has got to help him somehow, so she offers to become a hunter warrior herself. After all, she already knows how good she is at fighting, and how she even has a body purpose for doing so. All she needs is an approval. Her request, however, was immediately denied by Dr. Edo, who despises the mere thought of her doing such a dirty job. He can provide for her. All he expects her to do is to just stay beautiful. This makes Alita immensely angry, and she storms right into the factory to become Hunter Warrior herself. The audacity this girl has. How dare! Wait, she actually makes sense. Edo understood that Alita is becoming an adult, that she has a mind of her own and that he cannot control her even if he just wants to protect her. He simply cannot bind her wings forever and has to let her go at some point. That moment just arrived. This was bound to happen eventually. This is how parenthood works. Soon enough we can see her acting on her own and doing whatever she wants to do, with Edo being only a supporting character that's helping her rather than protecting her. In the manga, she even starts to live on her own afterwards, and she's doing more than splendidly enough, even without Edo by her side. The way the author was able to describe this part of human life, becoming an adult, becoming independent from their parents, is just incredible. This is a magnificent feat of story making, and after I've seen the film, I've been left dumbfounded by how can a single man create a story that's so relatable and yet set in a futuristic dystopian sci-fi world. I just couldn't comprehend how good and realistically it felt. All I have to say is that it's worth every penny I've spent on it and more. There was also that romance part between Hugo and Alita, which I've seen a lot of people talk pretty negatively about, saying that it was not believable enough and cringy and bad and yeah, you know the drill. But I think that was exactly the point of it. Tell me whose first love is not cringy and chaotic. People, especially around this age, tend to act pretty impulsively when it comes to love, or life in general. The first girl that shows a man the tiniest bit of affection will immediately become their until death do us apart, and they don't care about whether it's logical or not. This obviously results in a tragical breakup 9 times out of 10, and this film depicts that situation perfectly. Albeit Hugo tragically dying is a bit of an overkill, but it does symbolize the real life event rather well. The story overall is amazing, and I can only recommend it. But nothing is perfect, and this story too has its issues. I mainly had a problem with the ending of this film. It felt too abrupt, too sudden, as if at the very last moment James Cameron realized that the film is just a touch too long for his liking and decided to cut a random part out of it, leaving this rotten cherry at the top of the otherwise delicious cake. When I finished watching this film, my reaction to the ending was, wait, that's all? And contrary to a popular belief, I don't think it was a cliffhanger either. It didn't open any big story arc or anything that would make you curious about what's going to happen next. It was just plain unfinished. In my opinion, it's possible that Rodriguez was forced to cut the costs of the film at the very last moment, resulting in this confusing ending. Maybe, but that's just my guess. There was also that Hugo climbing to Zalem for no reason part, which I disliked. Like, if it was so easy to get to Zalem that you could just climb there, why didn't you do it before? Oh, I know, because it's literally banned, and the punishment for even trying to climb up there is death. So, why are you doing it now? This isn't a horror movie, you're not supposed to be this dumb. In the manga, it actually makes sense, as Hugo starts climbing the tube after he goes crazy as a result of Vector telling him that he cannot get him to Zalem despite what he has done for him. I'm not gonna tell you the whole story of it, but yeah. In the manga, Hugo went nuts and trying to climb up to Zalem, which makes sense. But here it just happens. No reasoning, no seasoning, just Hugo being suicidal all of a sudden. Sure, Vector still tells Alita that the only way Hugo would get up to Zalem is in pieces, just like in manga, but he tells it just to Alita, not Hugo. So, yeah, I think this part could have been done a bit better. Still, the story of this film is one of my favorites so far. Probably not something you would want to watch with your buddies on a Saturday night, but if you are willing to emotionally invest into the story, the result will be more than worth it. But now to the music of this film. If the visuals were stunning, the story was heartwarming and beautiful, the music was lacking. And by lacking, I mean literally lacking. When I got home from seeing the movie, I immediately started searching the word Alita on all manner of questionable websites. And sure enough, after a while the 1984 effect took place and Alita's soundtrack started appearing in my YouTube recommendations. However, after listening to a few of those songs, I realized that I do not recognize any of them. Well, I did recognize one of them, the Motorball, but that's about it. The rest of them was completely alien to me. They weren't bad, don't get me wrong. Junkie XL is a great musical composer and the soundtrack of this film is only a proof of that. But the music was literally lacking from the film. I myself make YouTube videos. I work with background music and I do know just how much can a good background track change a person's perception of the video. I also do know that if you want to emphasize something, it's better to leave out the music entirely, because that way the viewer has one less distracting element to worry about and can truly focus on what you are trying to say to them. But here, that effect was used on almost the entire movie. That's just somebody being lazy. Sure, while watching the movie I had no problem with the music at all, and I didn't even notice that it was missing. But a good, memorable soundtrack might sometimes be the sole reason people end up liking a certain franchise and will watch its sequels. Here, that memorable soundtrack was simply missing. But now to my final verdict, which is that the film is a must-watch. Seriously, I can't stretch this enough. It is amazing all around. Breathtaking visuals, some of the most well-done fight scenes I've seen to date. Just look at those moves, and a story that's so good I had lost myself in it, not just while watching the movie, but also while writing this very script. Oh, and don't even get me started on the cast of this film. It felt as if it was 20 years in production, just because it was waiting for the perfect set of actors, and James finally found them. Choosing Rosa Salazar to play as Alita was the best choice ever. She practically didn't even need to act. She already was a real-life Alita. Vector, played by Mahershala Ali, was a magnificent choice as well. And Edo, you probably forgot your nose in the manga. Not that I complain. This film is, in my opinion, an easy 10 out of 10. Just the fight scenes alone make the film worth the watch. But there is still one reason why I think people might not like it, and it's that the story is kinda hard to follow and all over the place at times. I personally managed to hold on this roller coaster of a story, but I've seen that a lot of people fell off, and they weren't too happy about it. The reason why I think the story looks like this is because it's an adaptation of a manga. Not like it's a bad thing, but Japanese manga usually tends to focus more on building up the world first and only then on actually putting in the bad guys. Whereas the Western literature tends to slam the "he who must not be named" in the first 50 pages of the book, and you immediately know that he's gonna be the end boss of the entire book. The first 2 to 3 volumes of Ganonema literally don't have a single enemy that could be considered a big bad guy. They are just momentary enemies whose sole reason to exist is to just drag you deeper into the story to explain to you just how dark and dystopian is the Earth 300 years after a fall. This, don't get me wrong, but this wouldn't make for a good film, and James Cameron knew it. But instead of making a completely new story, he decided to stay true to the original source material. Why? Well, for that I would recommend you to watch these 2 videos made by Nick on the Planet Ripple, where he explains just how important and great is the story of Alita, and also why it possibly caused James Cameron to love it so much that he simply couldn't not make a movie out of it. Really, this guy explains it way better than I would. Still, for this reason, James Cameron decided to follow the OVA's version of the story, rather than manga's version of the story. After all, the OVA is a bit closer to being an actual film than manga is, so it actually makes sense. But he still did quite a few changes to the story because the OVA has only 2 episodes, which together have a runtime of only about 50 minutes, which is not much, not to mention the enormous plot holes it has. Also, in Japan it might be alright to save a girl from a certain death, but over here in the West, if I were to see a man take an immobilized girl out of a scrapyard, then bring her back to life, only to then force her into being his daughter because she has no one else to go to, yeah, I would be kinda creeped out by that. So, I can understand the changes Cameron had done to the story, to make it more acceptable for the Western audience. The story as a whole felt to me as if Cameron took the first 3 volumes of Gun Anime, put them into a blender and served them on the side of the OVA's version of the story, all of which was then served on a platter of his own ideas, together making for an amazing gourmet meal. It was just astonishing. But sometimes you just couldn't avoid noticing that the story was simply toyed with before. But in my opinion, unless you are specifically looking for those exact situations, it was easily forgettable. Either way, I'm going to end the video right about here because I could talk about this film for as much as 2 hours if I wanted to, but I would never be able to release such a video. Also, because of all the shortening and reworking of the script, I ended up talking about the negatives of this film more than I originally wanted to, so just remember that I didn't mean it like that, and that in my opinion the film is easily 10 out of 10 and an absolute must watch for everyone, and that even the negatives it has only make the film feel a bit more natural, which is great. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.